I'm here at Barton Moss with Ian R. Crane. Ian, more deliveries today. Is it a losing battle?
It's not a losing battle, but it's certainly an uphill battle. What we've seen today is the level of testosterone in the police being up to a level that we actually haven't seen probably since the first day of the blockade. It's my opinion that what occurred today was the police on a mission to make 5 arrests, and they did indeed make 5 arrests. One of the inspectors was actually overheard saying we need to arrest 1 more, which would indicate that they had a quota. So the front line of the police was very, very different today than anything we've seen previously. They were non-communicative, they were very aggressive, they were pushing people forcibly in the back, and what we've seen here is very clearly a case of somebody taking the decision that you've got to march the trucks up the road. Now, unfortunately, obviously what that does is it pushes tensions much higher, and what we saw is that the tensions amongst the protectors probably being at a higher level than we've seen previously, and certainly the relationship between the protectors and the police has deteriorated on the basis of what we have seen today.
How many protectors were there? This
is the great tragedy, that there was probably only about 20 protectors in the front line. There was probably about half a dozen from the press corps, but the great tragedy is that the local population were conspicuous by their absence. And in reality, if this campaign is going to succeed, then the local population is going to have to express its displeasure by coming down to Barton Moss and participating in the blockades. Otherwise, the reality is that if the police come down with an arrest quota of 5 or so, then in the space of a few days there's not going to be too many people here, and iGas will effectively be awarded their social license through the apathy of the local population. So the population of Greater Manchester have a very, very difficult choice to make right now. It shouldn't be difficult, but it clearly is a difficult one for them, and that is, do they simply allow this industry to kick off and just learn to live with the consequences of this whole area from here right across the Wirral becoming an industrial wasteland within the next couple of decades, the land effectively becoming toxic, the water becoming toxic, and leaving a legacy to future generations that actually doesn't bear thinking about. And Albert, as is always the case, you know, I don't expect anyone to take anything I say at face value. All of the evidence is freely available. All we ask people to do is take a little bit of time, look at the impacts of fracking in places like the US, in Canada and Australia, and anybody who believes that the UK is somehow going to be different and therefore not suffer from the contamination of the water, the soil and the air, and somehow the people not suffer the negative health effects that the people who live over the gaslands in the US, Canada, Australia and elsewhere are suffering, then I mean that is either arrogance or simply delusional.
Part of the problem with people coming down to support you is obviously that nobody knows when these trucks are going to arrive, and that obviously works in iGas's favour and the police's favour, and you know, people go to work and things like that. How realistic is it to expect lots and lots of people to come down every time there's an incident?
The population of Greater Manchester is listed as 2.78 million. We don't need 2.78 million people down here. It'd be amazing if they did turn up, but that's not going to happen. But even 200 people, I mean, yesterday it was a Sunday and there was somewhere in the region of 250-300 people here for the rally, most of them local people obviously, to show their support for what's occurring here. And it was a great carnival atmosphere. Obviously on the weekdays when the deliveries are coming, it's very different. Every day that we've had deliveries, they've generally kicked off at around about 10:30 and it's all over by sort of 12:30, 1 o'clock. We know people can't get here every day, but if some people came down one day, other people would come down the next day. You know, this is what happened to Borkham. It was a rolling protection camp. You know, you had your literally probably, okay, a few more than here, there was maybe 120 or so permanent residents, if you like, of the camp. But the rest of the time, the protection community was made up of people that came in literally for the day. Now here it would seem, because obviously the days are shorter right now, you know, nothing's going to happen before dawn and nothing's going to happen after dusk, particularly because of the narrowness of the road here. So the reality is that it's a pretty fair assumption to say that if people got here for 10:30, they'd probably be away by lunchtime. But we need people to come down in significant numbers in that period, because that way the police are going to find it a lot more difficult to push a larger number of people forward than they are the 20 or so people that are forming the line right now.
Have you got any kind of alert system in place? Because the police do kind of give themselves away by amassing down at Salford Red Stadium. So have you got an alert system where you can let people know who would want to come down?
Well, the alert system is on Facebook. Say No to Fracking on Barton Moss is, I mean, if people just put in Barton Moss into Facebook, they'll find the relevant pages for what's going on here. Or one of the other general anti-fracking pages like Fracking Hell UK or Fracking Nightmare, or my page, Ian R. Crane, or go on to Twitter and follow me, again, Ian R. Crane, or Helen Chunso, and that way, you know, people will get an indication that something's about to kick off. But I think it's pretty safe to say that most weekdays it's likely that something is going to happen, because they only have one delivery a day. They form all the trucks into one convoy, and today they got the trucks through probably in about 45 minutes or so, due to the aggression of the police. And what we also saw, I think, is policing that, in my opinion, is out of control. I mean, you know, in my youth, I was actually very proud of the British police. You know, the reputation of the police obviously took a battering in my eyes in the 1980s with their behaviour during the course of the miners' strike. And you know, I mean, I will share with you that I wasn't a supporter of the miners, you know, for a number of reasons, but back then, 30 odd years ago, but because of the behaviour of the police, my sympathy went out to the miners and their families. And then I've lived outside the UK for 25 or so of the last 30 years, but you know, what I've seen today and the attitude and the behaviour I've seen today makes me very concerned that what we're dealing with here is a police force that is very much acting as the hired help for the corporations, and we know that the corporations are doing as much as they possibly can to gain supremacy. I mean, we see this with the transatlantic trade and investment partnership that is now starting to raise its head. And if this partnership effectively becomes established in the statutes, what it will mean is that the corporations take precedence over everything. And you know, what we're seeing right now with the fight against this industry, the unconventional oil and gas industry, may actually be potentially the last stand for the British people before the country becomes a corporatocracy.
Right, Ian, I know you've got a show to prepare for tonight, so I'm going to let you get on with that. Thank you very much for talking to us.
Thanks, Albert.